I want to take a look at the Fallout precons. There are 4 of them, and Jake and I have gone through and upgraded each of them with some easy removals and some easy adds to make them more powerful right out of the box. I'm going to go through all 4 decks, so check the timeline so you can scrub to the one you picked up, but do me a favor, if you get value from any little piece of this video, hit that subscribe button for me as a way of saying thank you. We would really appreciate it. Give me a second to thank all the people that support Jake and I so that we can do this full time, and we'll be right back with the upgrades of these 4 decks.
Highest level of gratitude to our patrons who power the channel through Patreon. Check out the Patreon link in the description to learn about monthly giveaways, VIP Discord access, and even our official playmat.
Huge shout out to our sponsors that allow us to work on the channel full time. Card Conduit, the best place to sell your cards on the internet. TCG Player, the best place to buy them. Dragon Shield, the best way to protect them. MTG Stocks, the best way to track the long-term prices of them so you know you're getting a good deal. And Moxfield, which we're going to use a lot in the video today. Let's start with the upgrade of Mutant Menace, which is led by the wise Mothman. Go check the link in the description for all of these deck lists. They're all on our Moxfield. Wise Mothman says a blue, a green, a black, and one other for a 3/3 flying insect mutant. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. We'll go over what those are. Whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, which is put from a library into a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. Checking out rad counters real quick, we'll look at Scryfield and see the reminder card here. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you have any rad counters, mill that many cards. For each non-land card milled this way, you lose 1 life and a rad counter. So it's going to be a way of milling your opponents toward your victory. We're going to do a little bit of damage as they're milling non-land cards, and as they hit those rad counters are going to come off. Notice that these are countered so they can be proliferated. That's something we're going to want to lean into. When you look back at the deck though, Wise Mothman enters the battlefield or attacks, each player is going to get a rad counter. So you're going to get in on the mill as well, so let's take advantage of that. We're also going to be putting +1/+1 counters on a lot of creatures on our deck, so proliferating those and leaning into +1/+1 counter strategies is what we want to do. And the deck came like that. Winding Constrictor was included in here. If 1 or more counters would be put on an artifact or creature you control, that many +1 are put on it. We've got a lot of cards like Infesting Radroach, deals combat damage to a player. They get that many rad counters. Not fantastic, a 2/2 flyer for 3 in Commander off the rip, but when you notice that your Commander and a lot of your synergies are putting +1/+1 counters on cards like Infesting Radroach, suddenly we have the potential to be giving them a lot of rad counters so that we can burn them down through mill. Cards like Boatfly Swarm, 5 counters on it when it ETBs. Damage would be dealt to it, you prevent it, but you remove that many +1/+1 counters, and then each player is getting a rad counter for all the counters removed. So we've got a lot of counters punching around in our deck. We've got some proliferate abilities that came along with the deck. Agent Frank Horrigan enters the battlefield or attacks, proliferate twice, plus a lot of other crazy text. This is the kind of stuff that we want to do. Nuclear Fallout, we're killing stuff, we're getting rad counters, and that's really how we want to focus this. If we can, we get as many proliferate and counter increasing effects as we possibly can. We want to proliferate, we want to get rad counters on our opponents. Whenever a equipped creature attacks until the end of defending player's next turn, that player gets 2 rad counters whenever they cast a spell. And look, we want to have some reanimation as well. I sort of blazed through it because it's one of my upgrades in the deck, and we'll go over the upgrades and the cuts for this one once we've kind of talked about it. But reanimate, if we're milling creatures into our own graveyard, let's have some reanimation spells in there to take advantage of it. Cards like Atomize, destroy permanents, then you're proliferating. We're preventing all damage dealt to permanents this turn, proliferating, putting hexproof and indestructible abilities on permanents we control with counters. That's basically what we want to be doing here. I've also included cards like Conduit of Worlds. You can play lands from your graveyard. If we're milling lands, if we're milling creatures, we want to be able to get some of them back. So let's use Moxfield's super sweet ability with precons here and go to View Precon Upgrades. When you take a look at it, these are the ones when it says unique to Mutant Menace. That means those are the ones that I cut. I cut 8 cards from this deck. Rampant Growth, because there is a lot of ramp in this, and you'll see exactly what we've put in. We've also replaced some of that. Fraying Sanity, I wanted some cards that milled all players. I didn't want cards that just milled one player in particular. This could be left in there as just like a screw you, one in particular person, but I wanted to go for more of a wide strategy since those rad counters are going on everybody. I want to get some cards that are going to hit everybody. We're in a green deck. I love the talisman reprints in this deck, but I don't love them in the deck in particular. Not a ton of inherent strategy with the commander or the deck itself to run more artifacts. So let's just ramp in lands since we're in green and we can do that. Strength bobblehead, 3 mana to put 1+1/+1 counter on a creature is not really where I want to be living, so I took that one out. And then glowing one, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they get 4 rad counters, which is pretty strong. But whenever a player mills a non-land card, you gain 1 life. At 2/2, this could potentially grow into a threat with all the +1 counter strategies. I just wish that maybe the rad counters they started low and ramped up instead of being a small one that deals a lot of rad counter damage. It's just not exactly what I want to be looking for. And as you can see, I cut a basic swamp because the land count in this deck was off the charts out of the box, and so we could manage to cut 1 land back and still be in a completely safe place. Let's look for what I added in. Reanimate. You saw this. We're going to take some creatures out of the graveyard. We're going to put them onto the battlefield. That's where we want to be living, especially if we're milling a bunch of our own stuff into the graveyard. Same thing with Conduit of Worlds. You can play lands from your graveyard and you can tap it to choose target non-land permanent card in your graveyard. And if you haven't cast a spell this turn, you can cast that card as your spell for the turn. You can't cast any additional spells if you do that. Sort of slows the potential roll of this card if it got out of hand. But playing lands from our graveyard, this is a nice little budget Crucible of Worlds. But Crucible of Worlds may also want to be a card that you want to put in the deck. Bloodchief Ascension's kind of insane in this deck. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you put a quest counter on it, which rad counters are going to help us have them losing life. And then whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, meaning milled from the top, if Bloodchief Ascension has 3 or more quest counters on it, won't be hard to pull off. You may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life. That's for each counter. That's for each card that's milling in, I should say. I'm thinking in terms of rad counters. So for each counter, they're milling a card. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, they lose 2 life. Those chunks, man. Bloodchief Ascension is a 1 mana win condition in this deck. Evolution Sage, Landfall, Proliferate. This is just so fantastic in utility and clutch in this deck. You gotta love it. Let's go to look at the details of this so we can actually read the card. Vraska Betrayal Sting is a completed walker, so you can pay the 1 symbol and 2 life or an extra black mana. For 0, you draw a card, you lose a life, you proliferate. We love that. That's where we want to be. We're going to be proliferating all of our opponent's rad counters. We're going to be proliferating all of our +1/+1 counters. We're going to lose a life. We're going to draw a card. Vraska's also going to get a counter. I know it says 0, but proliferate. We can proliferate Vraska. Let's go. -2 target creature becomes a treasure artifact that just aces a creature. And then the -9, we don't worry about that. But we do like draw a card, lose a life, proliferate. That is very strong, especially on a $5 mythic. Mesmeric Orb is just going to decrease the time it takes to burn our opponent's libraries to the ground. This is what I was talking about. I want to take out cards like Fraying Sanity because we've got so many other synergies to lean into, and I want to put in cards like Mesmeric Orb where we really get bang for our buck. Now notice I said so many synergies to lean into. We got +1/+1. We want to do a little reanimation thing probably. We've got the rad counters going. We still might just win through combat damage because you saw a lot of our stuff can grow with the +1/+1 counters. And so having all of this going on in the deck means we're not fully focused on the mill idea. If you want to go all in on the group mill and just make it about only cards that say rad counters, milling, and reanimation, I mean, that's a pretty solid package. And then you can start thinking about cards like Fraying Sanity. But when you're really kind of like, I want a little bit of this strategy, a little bit of this strategy, and that's how you're going to have fun with this deck, which I think this deck has the possibility to be really fun because it's coming at you from a bunch of very powerful different angles. You want to run cards like Mesmeric Orb where you're really you get that right hook in there when you're casting it instead of a little bit on you, maybe targeted on you. We're not going to hit everybody, but Mesmeric Orb definitely is. We swapped out the one searching for basics so that we can put in 3 visits and eventually get the triome in here so we can search that up, and any of our shocks, we can search those up. You will thank me that we just went ahead and swapped rampant growth into a 3 visits. Really easy swap. Mind Crank, same thing as Mesmeric Orb. Whenever an opponent loses life, that player puts that many cards from the top of their library into their graveyard. This stuff just starts getting absolutely nutty. Rad counters, they have 5 rad counters, let's say. They mill 5 cards. For each non-land in there, they're losing a life, they're losing a rad counter. For each of those life loss, they're putting another card from the top of their library into their graveyard, and it just rolls and rolls and rolls. And so I think if you just make this quick swap of these 8 cards, you'll instantly sort of refine the deck along some fun lines, and you should have a very good time with the Mutant Menace deck. Let's talk about the science, the Energy Commander deck from Fallout, and it starred Dr. Madison Lee, a blue, a red, and a white for a 2/3 human scientist. You cast an artifact spell, you get an energy if Madison is on the battlefield. You tap it, pay an energy, target creature gets +1/+0, gains trample haste until end of turn. Tap it, pay 3 energy, draw a card. Tap it, pay 5 energy, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Look, I will be honest with you. All of my upgrades for this deck came from one set, and that is because, well, 2 sets, 1 block. You know what I'm saying. That is because we've only had 2 blocks, 1 set, 1 plane, feature energy ever. So we're really leaning heavy on, I hope there are good energy cards in this deck, which there are. And then we're going to put some more energy cards in there just because we need a certain amount of energy cards in there. I'll be real with you. This deck is probably a little bit lower tier as far as power level goes right now, but I have a feeling that this one's going to get a major upgrade when we get to Modern Horizons 3 later this year. That's when we're going to see another energy precon in the exact same year, and it's along a Modern Horizons set, so you would assume that there's going to be some very pushed cards in there. But look, this deck is about creating energy. Assaultron Dominator enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. You're trying to have as much energy at any given time. Attacks, you exile the top card of your library, you can get 2 energy because you're going to have payoffs for this energy. Liberty Prime Recharge, when it attacks or blocks, you sack it unless you pay 2 energy, but it is an 8/8 with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. And then you can also pay 2, tap it, sack an artifact, get 2 energy, draw a card, so it can help pay for its own ability. You've got a lot of fun cards in here. Behemoth of Vault 0 ETBs, you get 4 energy. When it dies, you can pay an amount of energy equal to target non-land permanent's mana value and then destroy that permanent. So you've got some fun payoffs. You've got some artifact synergies as well. Wake the Past, return all artifact cards from your graveyard to the battlefield and they gain haste. Draw cards equal to the highest mana value among artifacts you control. Counter target spell, you get an amount of energy equal to its mana value. This is kind of where you want to be living with this deck. You've also got some pretty powerful new energy artifacts like Automated Assembly Line and T45 Power Armor that are going to let you get to business here. But I think this deck really shines once it's actually upgraded. You can see a lot of cards that have energy on them are from one set. So let's go check out the upgrades that we made. These are the cuts that we made. 15 cuts, y'all. But look, 6 of these 15 cuts are basic lands, and I'll show you what we ended up doing. Let me show you what we cut and why we cut it. Over Encumbered is a 2-mana enchantment aura to enchant an opponent. When Over Encumbered enters the battlefield, enchanted opponent creates a clue token, a food token, and a junk token. And at the beginning of combat, on enchanted opponent's turn, that player may pay 1 for each artifact they control. And if they don't, creatures can't attack this combat. This just relies on too many things for me. I don't want to give them tools to use, and as far as I'm concerned, a clue token, a food token, and a junk token are very valuable potential pieces to a lot of different strategies. Then all we're doing is shutting off their creatures from attacking. So if they're not a creature-based deck, this is kind of a dead card in our hand. I don't like cards that could ever be dead toward like a single opponent, an entire strategy, and so having to jump through a couple hoops on this one, I just don't like it. Steel Overseer, I ended up cutting from this deck. If you want to lean this deck more into artifact creatures, absolutely leave this in the deck. However, there's a lot of legendaries in here, and there's a lot of non-creature artifacts in here, and so with Steel Overseer, I felt like I wasn't getting enough value, so I cut it. Plains, I cut 2 of those. I'll show you the lands that I put in. Dweller's Journey, Vault 13, 4 mana saga here. For each player, exile up to one other target enchantment or creature that player controls until Vault 13 leaves. Chapter 2, you gain 2 life and you scry 2. Chapter 3, return 2 cards exiled with Vault 13 to the battlefield under their owner's control and put the rest on the bottom of their owner's libraries. This is a lot to go through to not remove everything. I get that some stuff, your stuff, I guess, can come back too. I just don't like this and how it plays in the deck. And I think that it's better off in a different one of your decks. Same with Panharmonicon. Wow, is this card powerful? But the main commander and the lieutenant commander for this deck, Liberty Prime and Dr. Madison Lee, don't have any enters the battlefield abilities. And so we already aren't getting any value off of this from our commanders. Then you're looking at like, okay, well, I hope I draw, some of the few enters the battlefield creatures I have. Take this and put it in a different deck. This card is dope. You're going to love having it, but I just don't think it belongs in this deck personally. Expert level safe is just, come on, 2 mana, ETBs, exile the top 2 cards of your library face down. Pay 1 tap, you and target opponent each secretly choose 1, 2, or 3. Then those choices are revealed. If they match, sack the safe. Put all cards exiled with it into their owner's hands. Otherwise, exile the top card of your library face down. And so I guess it just keeps adding more and more cards. This is a fun card, don't get me wrong, and maybe in decks where you need stuff to be cast from exile or you want stuff entering from exile or something like that, this could be a good card for that, but this isn't a card that I want in this deck. Look, we're leaning into energy, we're leaning into artifacts. Look at this card, y'all. There is nothing on this card that has anything to do with energy or has anything to do with artifacts. It's a good card. It's a fun card. Don't get me wrong. Jake and I put this in our review of the cards that matter in Commander, but it's just not where I want to be with this deck. Legendary Crab Mutant. Goad target creature an opponent controls. That player draws a card. You add 1 red mana. I don't even know what to say about this card. It's super cool. It's fun. It has nothing to do with this deck, and I don't want it in here. Put it in another deck or build a funny crab deck around it. I think that this is an interesting design. It's just not the strategy or the synergy that we're going for here. This is the strategy or synergy that we're going for with Artifact, but that's about where it ends. Pay 5 mana, draw 1 card. That is awful, especially in a blue deck, and we don't need to run it. Bottle Cap Blast has improvised, meaning your artifacts can help pay for it, which is kind of cool. But for 5 mana instant speed, 5 damage to any target, and then the excess being turned into tap treasure tokens, it's just not impactful enough to me. Sometimes this will be a free 5 damage to a thing and it'll kill most stuff. I just don't like this as removal. If I want to kill something, I want to kill something. I don't want to get tricky and maybe get some treasure tokens. Also, 2 basics islands, 2 basics mountains. Let's look at these and I'll show you what lands I added in. You will notice immediately Seat of the Synod, Great Furnace, Ancient Den. All of these are artifact lands, meaning they count toward artifact counts, and none of them come into play tapped. $1, $1, $2. Go pick these up, take out a basic plane, basic mountain, basic island. If you take no other advice from me, just take out those 3 basics, put these 3 cards in, and you're going to have a better time, I promise. You're also going to want to run Karn's Bastion, I think, 4 mana to proliferate. You can proliferate energy counters, and so it's worth it to put a little proliferate in this deck as well. Second deck in a row where we've had proliferate as a strategy. Decoction Module, 2 mana. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get an energy. Stop! That's all I need to hear. I'm in. The rest is just gravy. ETBs, you get 6 energy for 6 mana, and you can pay 4 to bounce it back to its hand, so you're netting energy as long as you got energy and as long as you got mana. I'm loving the Aethertide Whale. Put it in there. These are the kind of cards we have to put in this deck. We need the solid to okay range of mechanic synergistic energy cards. That's where you want to look. Aetherworks Marvel is at the top end of that range. This had to be banned at a certain time, believe it or not. When you can spin this into an automatic Eldrazi, pretty sweet. But pay 6 energy, look at the top 6, cast a card for free. Yeah, we like Aetherworks Marvel in here. Sword of Truth and Justice will probably be my most controversial upgrade here, but I like the damage trigger. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, then proliferate. You can proliferate your energy counters, so I like Sword of Truth and Justice. We're going to have some stuff getting through. Gonti's Aether Heart, 6 mana. When it or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you get 2 energy counters. That could be all this says, and I think I would still put it in this deck right now. Based on the options that we have right now prior to Modern Horizons 3 coming out and probably bringing us way more energy commander support. Pay 8 energy, exile Gonti's Heart, take an extra turn after this one. I would save that obviously until you're going to win. You don't want to just randomly do that, because this being an energy engine on your battlefield, fantastique. Aether Swarm Rock, 4 mana, 3/3. When it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get an energy counter. Done. I'm in. The rest is just gravy. Whenever an artifact or artificer enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, you get 2 energy. Yes, baby. That's what I want. ETBs, you get an energy. Done. It can turn energy into mana of any color. Done. We've already seen this card in this video. What's going on? Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you proliferate. Yeah, baby. Tezzeret's Gambit, draw 2 cards, proliferate. Yeah, baby. Confiscation Coup, 5 mana, choose target artifact or creature, you get 4 energy. Then you can pay an amount of energy equal to that permanent's converted mana cost, and if you do, you gain control of it. It's yours now. Here's some energy. Have a good one. Plus, you get 4 energy off the cast of this, which makes it super really good. So that's what I would do to the energy science Fallout deck in its current state. Those are the upgrades that I would make, and I would look out for Modern Horizons later this year, because this deck probably gets another big upgrade. Real quick, huge shout out to our Patreon members. Y'all allow Jake and I to stay as independent as we possibly can. If you're not a patron but you want to get involved with the community on a deeper level, go check it out. Signed card, community play day, special Discord access with our buy-sell server. We've got a lot of special perks up from there, including one-on-one and group meetings with me and Jake. Go check it out, see if it's a good fit for you. Thank you very much. Let's take a look at what I think is everybody's favorite, and that's Hail Caesar, the Mardu creature token sacrifice deck. Caesar, Legion's Emperor, is a black, a white, a red, and 1 for a 4/4 human soldier that says whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature, and when you do, choose 2. You can create 2 1/1 red and white soldier creature tokens with haste that are tapped and attacking. That's probably going to be your main choice in this deck, the way I've built it especially, the way I've upgraded it especially. We need creature tokens to get our little synergies rolling, because that's going to let all of our other cards do their job when we've got Caesar creating 2 1/1s whenever we attack. And Caesar doesn't have to attack. Caesar sees something else attack, 2 soldiers come popping out. That is to our benefit. You can also have the trigger draw you a card and lose you a life, or you can have Caesar deal damage equal to the number of creature tokens you control to target opponent. That's probably going to be a finishing move. Your least used but most impactful mode of this will be that final one. And then your secondary, if you just need cards, we need cards in our hand, we're out of steam, we've been board wiped. Caesar can allow you to draw cards, which is never a bad thing to have out of the command zone. This is basically a soldier token / human go wide deck. I think that this one has got a lot of potential right out of the box. Cards like Colonel Autumn Exploit gives other legendary creatures we control exploit, which means you can sack a creature when it comes into the battlefield. And whenever a creature you control exploits a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. You see how the synergies sort of start to wrap around themselves and really benefit each other. One of my favorite new cards, Aradesh, the Founder. 3 mana for a 1/4 human soldier that's got Enlist, which says as this creature attacks, you can tap a non-attacking creature you control without summoning sickness. And when you do, you add its power to this creature's until end of turn. And it says whenever a creature you control attacks, if it enlisted a creature this combat, the creature that attacked gains double strike until end of turn. And if that creature's power 4 or greater, draw a card. We've got creatures to add power. We've got creatures to enlist with Aradesh. We've got a lot of go wide strategy. Whenever Paladin Elizabeth Taggarty and at least 2 other creatures attack, draw a card. Then you may put a creature card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, where X is Paladin Elizabeth Taggarty's power. So you see what we're trying to do with this deck. We want to go wide. We want to put pressure on our opponent's boards. White Glove Gourmand enters the battlefield, creates 2 1/1s, and then sees a human die on your turn and gives you a food token. You've got cards like destroy all non-token creatures in here, creating creature tokens, giving everything +1/+1 in haste. Just absolutely dumping 1/1s onto the battlefield, using those to convoke up destruction spells that then let those creatures connive and get even bigger. So as far as upgrades go, let's take a look using the view precon upgrades feature, which I love. These are the cards that I cut. I cut 9 cards out of this. Luck Bobblehead, because in a vacuum, these by themselves aren't that good. There are 1 or 2 standouts. Luck Bobblehead is not one of them and not something we want. There's a couple of creatures in this deck that have this ability Squad, which lets you pay extra mana as you've cast it to get extra copies of it. This one I just don't think is impactful enough the way the math scales up, and I want something different in here. Butch Deloria is pretty cool, and I think this could be a great card in a different deck, but it just doesn't play with our strategy very well. It wants to see rogues or snakes, and that's just not what this deck spits out. We want to spit out soldiers and humans. That's kind of our creature types in this one. If you're looking for upgrades around this one, especially the way I want to build it, I would look for humans, I would look for soldiers, I would take out the rogue strategy, put it in a different one. Legendary artifact creature human here is Mr. House, president and CEO. Has to do with rolling dice and getting extra value out of it. Take this card out, build its own commander deck, and I think it'll be pretty sweet, could be pretty fun, but it doesn't have anything to do with what we want to do. Survivor's Med Kit is small beans, not impactful enough. I understand why it's in the deck, especially if you're just looking at these 4 in a vacuum as playing against each other. You've got some extra stuff to do it, but in a general case use, Survivor's Med Kit's not where you want to be. Ruthless Rad Rat is another clone, another squad card that is just not impactful enough in my opinion, and so I chopped it so that we can go wide with other creatures. I see what squad is trying to do, it's just not what I like, and I don't think it's impactful. Flying 2/1 Ed E, Lonesome Eyebot. Whenever you attack, if the number of attacking creatures is greater than the number of quest counters on Eddie, put a quest counter on it, pay 2, sack it, draw a card, then draw an additional card for each quest counter on it. I get it. I don't want to jump through this many hoops. I would rather just pay 2, draw 2, lose 2. If that's what we're going to do, I'm fine with that. I don't want to build this up over time because when I need cards, I need them now. I don't want to eventually draw some cards. Maybe. If it doesn't get exiled and I can't sack it for some reason. I don't want to play maybe. I want to play definitely. Thrill Kill Mercenary. This is closer. I left some of the squad cards in that I thought were actually impactful enough. But with the Disciple, I just barely cut it out because I don't want to be discarding my cards in this deck necessarily. In a deck that has anything to do with Madness or Reanimate or anything like that, I think that this card could be pretty dope. But the way I want to build this is not where I want to live with that. And then Charisma Bobblehead. A lot of times you're just going to have one of these out. Pay 4, create a 1/1. I don't like that. We can do better. And we did with these 9 cards. Animpackle. This is my current dual commander. This is my current brawl commander on Arena. It's brutal, y'all. 3 mana, 1/2. Whenever you attack with 1 or more non-gnome creatures, don't pay attention to that. Put a +1/+1 counter on Animpackle, then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Animpackle. This card goes wide so fast. You don't have to attack with Animpackle. You can attack with anything as long as it's not your gnomes. Your gnomes can still attack, but they attacking by themselves aren't going to trigger Animpackle. You need some other stuff attacking besides your gnomes, but you will, and you will create so many gnomes, and your opponents will pick up this card and read it and go, that's busted. It doesn't read busted, but it's busted. And you'll go, I know it's busted. Joel told me, and now we're here. I love you, because we're always nice to our teammates and our play group. Ishin 2 Heavens is 1. Mardu 3/4 Human Samurai. Does this card need to be introduced? Everybody's building this. Everybody's played against it. It's Panharmonicon except for creatures attacking. It doubles attacking triggers. Our commander has a dope attacking trigger. Enough said. Company Commander is from our Warhammer Universes Beyond. What is this, a crossover episode? When Company Commander enters the battlefield, create a number of 1/1 white soldier creature tokens equal to the number of opponents you have. It's always going to bring in 3 unless you've already killed somebody. In which case you're like, I'm fine with it bringing in 2. That's dope. Then whenever it attacks creatures you control, gain death touch until end of turn. Yeah, boy. Yeah, buddy. They don't want to block anymore. That's fantastic. Commander Mustard, another crossover episode from the Clue decks. It's good in Soldiers. I don't know. It's a weird card to recommend because it's a Clue character. It's Colonel Mustard. 5 mana, 5/5, human soldier. Other soldiers you control have vigilance, trample, and haste. That seems really good in a deck that makes soldiers. And then it's got this activated ability until end of turn soldiers you control gain whenever this creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to defending player. Wow. You can stack that? Wow. Bitter Blossom. We want to go wide. This is the OG. This is the enchantment you look to. Start my army building. Bring forth the swords for the soldiers. Bitter Blossom is going to just casually dump a 1/1 flyer on your battlefield every turn for just 1 life. I love Bitter Blossom in this deck. I love Bitter Blossom in general. It's also a creature you can sacrifice. It's just having an enchantment that will just passively give you one little thing toward your synergy is so much more valuable than y'all give it credit for. You're giving this card enough credit though. Did you see how we're going to be creating, when we attack, we're going to sacrifice a token to then create 2 tokens? Let me read Mirkwood Bats to you. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses a life. Nayali, Sun's Vanguard, new card. I love pulling in synergistic commanders. Newer card, I guess, is more accurate. I love pulling in synergistic commanders from the other precons when synergies and commander types, synergies and deck types, they sort of cross over a little bit. I like bringing in the commander and just being like, bro, get to work. Attacking tokens you control have double strike. Booyah. Whenever 1 or more tokens you control attack a player, exile the top card of your library. During any turn you attacked with a token, you may play that card. Nayali's fantastic in this for all of the reasons. Creatures you control get +1/+1. Beautiful. Grow my army. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, the call deals 1 damage to each opponent. Wowie, wowie, wow. That's going to deal a lot of damage over the course. You get 2 creature tokens entering the battlefield. This deals 2 damage to each opponent. 6 damage just off of 1 trigger of Caesar. And that ain't all we're trying to do. Get it going. This deck didn't include Idol of Oblivion. I guess they've reprinted it too much recently and they want you to go get it from another deck. But this is like premium card draw in any deck that's constantly creating tokens of any kind. Idol of Oblivion just goes in there. It should just go in there. It's like Soul Ring for decks that create tokens. You just kind of have to put it in there. 2 mana to draw a card. Yeah, it's fantastic. That's what I would do with the Caesar deck. Let me know what you did with yours, and let's take a look at the last one. Scrappy Survivors was the Naya deck with the dog as a commander. It had to deal with auras and equipment. We get aura and equipment decks all the time. It being 3 colors is kind of sweet if you want access to a 3rd color, but a lot of decks can also refine around the 2 color line and be just fine. Dogmeat, though, is going to enter the battlefield and have you mill 5 cards, then return an aura or equipment card from your graveyard to your hand. So Dogmeat's going to go digging and get you an aura or equipment and bring it back to you. And then whenever a creature you control that's enchanted or equipped attacks, you create a junk token, which is an artifact that you tap and sacrifice to exile the top card of your library, and you can play that card this turn at sorcery speed. Pretty straightforward on the build with this deck. Dogmeat is going to get you some card advantage by giving you some aura and equipment when it ETBs. You're also going to get artifact tokens rolling in here, so we can lean into some artifact strategies. I really like cards like Ian the Reckless. Whenever it attacks, if it's modified, meaning it has an equipment or an aura or counters on it, it deals damage equal to its power to you and any target. You can have it deal that. Lots of cards in this that deal with being suited up, being ready to hold a sword for you and go fight in the name of your honor. 3-dog Galaxy News DJ. Whenever you attack, you can pay 2 and sack an aura attached to it. When you sack an aura, for each other attacking creature you control, you can create a token that's a copy of that aura attached to that creature. So you see, that is what we want to be doing. When it ETBs or dies, return up to 1 target aura or equipment card from your graveyard to your hand. We're going to be milling them in. We're going to be bringing them back to our hand. You've got insane cards like this that'll allow you to sort of just rearrange your aura and equipment all at once. You've got some destruction that creates junk tokens. And then you've got some auras and equipment that are just going to be really solid on the creatures that you've got to beat your opponents down. That's how you're going to win with this one. Cards like Strongback equip abilities you activate that target enchanted creature cost 3 less to activate. Aura spells you cast that target enchanted creature cost 3 less to cast, and then it gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment attached to it. You can create some really nasty threats with this deck, y'all. You've got the ability with cards like Almost Perfect, making the base power and toughness of a creature 9/10 to really beat your opponents down. I took some key cards out and I put some key cards in. Let's use the best feature over on Moxfield, the best new one anyway, and see what I did. We cut 5 cards from the main deck of this one. Squirrel Nest. This one's in here to make tokens. It's an aura, so it counts as an aura. And it's in here to make tokens that you can attach your equipment to as sort of a, just dump all the equipment on that and send it because you don't care if it dies. But if it gets through, it's dealing some damage and it can be a threat. I just wanted to make room for some other more synergistic pieces than this creates a body that stuff can get attached to. So I ended up cutting that. The Vault 24 Saga, I cut discard a card, then draw cards, find twice, and then reveal 5 non-land cards from your hand. For each of those cards that has the same mana value as another card revealed this way, you create a treasure token. It's cute. It's like poker. It's just not a card that I want to run. I don't really like it that much. That's a personal opinion. Commander Sophia de Guerre, I don't know how to pronounce that. 4 mana, 1/3. Flashing Human Pilot. When it ETBs, destroy up to 1 target legendary permanent. That permanent's controller creates a junk token. It's fine. It's nice. It's a 4 mana removal of just a legendary type permanent, so it's like a commander killer. I just want my stuff to be a little bit wider and not have so many narrow use cards in the deck, so I ended up chopping that one. Single combat is basically kill everything except for 1 creature or planeswalker that the opponents get to choose. I wish that you could choose. This is just the type of decision that I don't want to give my opponents, and so I never run cards like this. And then Big Horner Rancher, 5 mana, 2/5 Vigi. Tap it, add an amount of green equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, and you can sack it to gain life equal to the greatest toughness among other creatures you control. This could be a really great ramp, or it could just be the biggest womp of all time off the top of your deck. And I don't like cards that could potentially be womps. I want to get excited when I draw cards, like when I see cards like Forge Anew. When it ETBs, return target equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That sounds like exactly synergistic with where we live. As long as it's your turn, you may activate equip abilities anytime you could cast an instant. Nice. So we can just equip all of our stuff onto the creature they don't block at instant speed. And you may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip ability you activate during each of your turns. So the first most expensive thing to swap over, 0, it's free, and then all the other stuff can just follow over. Forge Anew is fantastic. It's less than $1. Look at that. Danitha, less than 50 cents. For a 3 mana 2/2 that says Vigi, Trample, Lifelink. Great keywords if we're going to suit Danitha up. And then once during each of your turns, you can cast an aura or equipment spell from your graveyard. I mean, this is an auto include, right? In this deck especially. SRAM Senior Edificer, Jake's personal favorite card, and I would get yelled at and maybe kicked off the channel and have the channel deleted if I didn't put SRAM Senior Edificer in a deck that has to deal with auras and equipments. Jake, my duty has been fulfilled. My curse mark continues to burn. Shishiro, the Shattered Blade, 4 mana, 4/4. Whenever an aura equipment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 with Menace. So now we're talking. Now we're creating a body in a way that I really like to attach stuff to. Plus it comes with Menace. Ooh, baby. Then at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each modified creature you control. Very good. Makes the creatures big. Shishiro spits out bodies with a fantastic keyword. You're undervaluing Menace and Commander, I promise. Spits these bodies out with fantastic keyword attached. You can equip stuff to them. You can put the aura on them, and then they start growing. Then open the armory. Go get the aura or equipment that's going to allow you to stay in the game. Go get the one that's going to allow you to beat your opponent right then and there. Open the armory and go get what you need. So ranking these commanders, looking at the 4 right next to each other. For me, number 4 is Dogmeat Ever Loyal. I think that with a deck like this, you really want to focus it around aura or equipment. There are so many cards, y'all, that have aura as a synergy or equipment as a synergy. You don't need to do both. to have a super synergistic deck, and it's probably going to be better if you just focus on one or the other. Then the other way to look at this is that you've got some decent recursion. Having a deck like an Aura and Equipment deck, you'll know if you've ever played it, it has the tendency to burn out. You need some good stuff drawing you cards. You need some good stuff returning cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Dogmeat will allow you to do that, but out of the box, I think it's a little unfocused. I think it's more unfocused, even though I cut fewer cards from it to replace more cards. It just got to the point where it's like, well, I mean, if we're going to cut an entire chunk of this synergy off, it's going to be so many cards. We're going to be cutting a lot of brand new Fallout cards, which is something I don't typically like to do with these pre-con upgrades, especially the Universes Beyond. I like to try and keep them as intact as we possibly can while giving them a nice boost. But I think Dogmeat's going to be number 4 for me. Dr. Madison Lee is the one that I'm personally most excited to build to get an upgrade, but I think it's going to be my number 3. After really spending some time with all 4 of these decks, I just don't think that we've got the support or the payoffs in enough numbers yet to really make an effective energy deck. And so that's why I'm putting Madison Lee at number 3. Now, after Modern Horizons 3, this deck could be the one to get, because you could have this as the base and use the Modern Horizons cards to supplement, or vice versa and use Modern Horizons as your base. You never know. But the fact is that you're going to increase the minimum quantity of playable energy-based commander cards, I would hope, with the Modern Horizons 3 Precon, so it may move up in the future. So I think that's got the best chance to get better all at once, but I still think it's number 3. At number 2, I'm going to put the Wise Mothman, and it's because rad counters, I need a little more time with them. My first exploration with them has gone really well. They're more powerful than I thought they were, and I really do think that they can get out of hand, but there's just not a ton of support for the mechanic. And so while it's super rad and very powerful, I just want to see more cards. It's like energy, except for I feel like it's a little more powerful right now. And so I really like the Mothman deck. I'm more excited about building it after I spent a lot of time with it, because right off the rip I was just like, I don't want to play that one. But it's been really interesting and I think it's powerful. And then number 1, I'm putting the Caesar deck. Draw a card, creating soldier tokens. There's just so much synergistic stuff, synergistic options to run in this deck that can put this one over the top. And so I think that one, if you're just crushing these 4 into each other or trying to analyze them in a vacuum and pick the best, I think I would go with Caesar, Legion's Emperor. If you've made it this far, the best way you can help us is click like and click subscribe if you haven't. The second best way that you can help us is go check out our Patreon, see if you want to jump in at any of the tiers. We've got some fantastic rewards up and down, and it'll make you eligible for our Commander Play Day, so you can come play Commander with us in the community 1 day a month, all day long. It's super rad. We're really looking forward to it. And the next best way you can help us is go tell our sponsors that you really love that they support Jake and Joel, and they definitely should keep doing that. Thank you very much for watching this. This was a long one. I hope you feel upgraded in your Fallout journey. See you in the next one.